Pastor Mike here of Christ Church, Godeland. We're going to continue our Bible talks, and today we're going to talk about how to choose a good translation. There are so many different translations and versions that are out there. How do you select a good one? Well, there are two questions that come up when selecting a translation. Number one, what is the source material? And number two, how was it translated? Now, the English translations of the Bible really begin in 1611. There were a few that were done before that, but 1611, that's the key time when King James authorized a translation of the Hebrew and Latin and Greek manuscripts into English. And so what they did, the scholars got together, and they didn't have dating or science or things like that much at that time. So what they did is they got together and they just collected all the different manuscripts that they had available to them at the time, and they compiled them into one document, which they called the Textus Receptus, or the received text. It's also known as the TR. And then they did the translation. And it's a word-for-word translation, so it happens to be a very good translation of the TR, the Textus Receptus. Now, language, of course, has changed quite a bit since 1611, and so did our understanding of ancient manuscripts. By the late 19th century, scholars were able to look back and determine which manuscripts and fragments of manuscripts were in fact the oldest, and more manuscripts have come to light since then. So the theory now is that the oldest manuscripts are less liable to corruption because they're closer to the original than any manuscripts that came along afterwards. This translation is made from this more accurate source material. Now, some will dispute this, but they include most of the translations done in the 20th century. It's just a little bit more of an accurate source material. The problem with our modern translations is that most of them don't use a word-for-word translation. They employ a theory of translation called dynamic equivalency. And the reason for it is that English and Hebrew and Greek are all very, very different languages, and issues of syntax and grammar and tense and word placement and things like that can make a word-for-word translation almost unintelligible. And so they began doing new translations. Now, the American Standard of 1901, this is probably a very, very good translation because it's based on very accurate source material, and it's a very word-for-word translation. Unfortunately, when they published the translation in 1901, they did the typeface very, very close together, and so it didn't sell very well because it was just frankly painful on the eyes and hard to read. The Revised Standard Version came out in 1947, and then the New American Standard was published in 1956. The Good News Bible came out in 1966, the New English Bible came out in 1971, and then the New International Version came out in 1973. In 1982, a new King James Bible came out, which is still word for word and still based on the TR, but it uses updated language. So that's a very good translation to use. Other versions of the Bible include various paraphrases, and paraphrases aren't really properly translations. That's why we call them a paraphrase. The Living Bible of 1971, and then the Message version by Eugene Peterson done in 1995. And there are numerous other examples. Some Bibles out there come with study tools, such as the Thompson Chain Reference Bible. There are inductive study Bibles. There are parallel Bibles, which include multiple versions placed side by side. Chronological Bibles, where they actually put all the books in chronological order. And through-the-year Bibles. So to find a good translation, what you want to do is look for a translation done by a panel of scholars to protect against bias. So the ABCs of Bible selection are: number one, accuracy. The King James and the American Standard of 1901 are highly accurate word-for-word translations. I would say the New American Standard of 1956 comes in second place. The second one is B for beauty. The New English Bible, for example, is very beautifully written, and I think God's Word should be. The English, that's their language, and so they tend to use it a little bit nicer than those of us in America do. Finally, there's the issue of clarity. And for this one, honestly, the New International Version is probably the easiest to read. So those are the ABCs you can look for: accuracy, beauty, and clarity. And I want to point out also, there's a number of Bible apps that are also available. There's Bible Gateway, there is YouVersion, there's the Blue Letter Bible. Another good app is called studylight.org. This is actually a website. I don't believe they have an app available yet. I wish they would. But it's still a very good tool to research into the original languages. Until next time, happy reading.